Good afternoon. What is going on, everybody? It's your boy Aaron B, and I got my co-host Shane Carter in the building. How's it going, Shane?
It's good to be back. I know you've been. I love how you expanded tackles and touchdowns. So you went from just being a Cowboy-centric show to including other aspects of the football world. You've been able to interview high school prospects around the state, even some small divisional colleges. And I think that it's nice that you don't necessarily just need me. I think it's cool how you've been able to grow the brand. I've checked out some of the stuff that you've done since then. I'm gonna try and get you some guests outside of the Cowboys world that'll help out because I want you because since tacos and touchdowns is your baby and I'm just the babysitter. I want to make sure that you have everything set up to where you can grow this show as big as you want it to.
Yeah, I appreciate that, bro.
You know it.
Yes, sir. But I want to give a quick shout out to my one of my friends. I bought one of the shirts. I got to support a small business. Shout out to Jordan with Oracle Athletics. If you're into like gym or CrossFit or any type like that, go hit him up. I actually have his link to his stuff where you can give him a follow as well. So definitely shout out to Oracle Athletics.
We'll put that in the comment section where to find all that stuff at the end of the show. That way it makes it. Yeah, we can do that. Because if he's going to give you some merch, at the very least, we can advertise for him. If he wants to advertise with us, unless this is like, a shameless plug, which I'm cool with.
Yeah. Yeah, we could do either one, but we definitely got to show love to our sponsors right now. Our first sponsor, and that is What a Clean Solution. You need to get those carpets clean, couches, towel, grout. You're moving in or moving out. You need to get the place to look brand new. Call What a Clean Solution, a family-owned mobile cleaning service that can clean anything from a small carpet to making your car or truck look brand new. Give them a call at 210-790-1410. Use the promo code TNT for 5% off your total cleaning. That's promo code TNT 210-790-1410 for 5% off. Kind of get better at doing these our sponsorships a little better. I guess we've been doing it for a cool minute, so it's all good.
It's all good. I mean, if their business is growing as a result of it, then obviously they don't care that much as long as you get the point across.
Oh yeah, of course. So we're gonna get into the nitty gritty when it comes to our Dallas Cowboys. We do have a special guest for y'all. We're gonna talk about that soon. I know, or did you want to go into it a little bit?
No. We're gonna save him for last. We want to make sure the people stay for the guests.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, shout out to the people that are coming in right now. But we're gonna get into the bubble players for the Dallas Cowboys. Who are some bubble players that you got on your list?
Okay, so I have to look at bubble players based on how we define it. I think you, if I had to guess, probably define a bubble player as someone who is still fighting for a roster spot but could easily fall off.
Oh, yeah.
To me, a bubble player is someone who's done enough to make the roster, but a bad performance could shift them back. Some people, and again, I think that's what some people determine bubble players the way you do, where it's like they can go either way. It's kind of like in the NCAA tournament, first four in, last four out kind of concept.
Yes.
If I look at the Cowboys bubble players, and I'm gonna go over just a couple, and I think you'll probably mention some more. I think the one that stands out the most right now might be someone like a Wanye Thomas, the defensive back, who's coming off his second year outside from the practice squad. He was a rookie last year coming out of Georgia Tech. Didn't really have a true position because he played a little bit of safety, a little bit of cornerback. Didn't really do a whole lot, but they knew his potential. He's 6'3", almost 200 pounds. He's long and rangy, a Dan Quinn special. This year, they're playing him as a free safety and sort of a deep nickel, a modified defensive back. It's kind of cool to see all these defensive backs that Dan Quinn coaches and the multiple roles that they can play. With Wanye Thomas, it's going to be tough because that would mean they're going to keep 6 safeties. We know they're going to keep it. We know they're going to keep 5: Malik Hooker, Jaron Kearse, Donovan Wilson, Izzy McQuanwu, and Marquise Bell, who's going to play both safety and linebacker. With Wanye Thomas, he's one of those players who's so good that he should be on the roster. He's done enough to earn a job on the roster, but is it a numbers game that they even want to keep 6 safeties? So that's probably the first one that stands out for me. I got more, but I want to hear some from you.
Okay, so I got my list right now, and it's actually one of the receivers, like you were talking about, numbers game, and that's Dennis Houston, who's been consistently in these 3 games where he's catching the ball. Last year, we were kind of like, we don't really know who Dennis Houston is, but he's kind of showing his name out there. But you got like Jalen Brooks, you got him, Jalen Marino Carper, you got Simi Fehoko, but Dennis Houston been putting his name out there. But can this last game, could he put himself where he could be that sixth receiver? Because I think we're almost set at our fourth or fifth. Well, of course, our fourth now because that's what.
And he looks better than last year.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Because we didn't know what type of receiver he was. We are just hearing from media and the Dallas Cowboys. Okay, he could be the number 2 or 3 receiver because we didn't have that receiver.
Well, because he coming out of college, he was a possession guy, and he could separate, but he didn't have the greatest speed. Whereas this year, he's shown good separation. Still, again, speed you can't really teach. That's something that you just develop with talent. Yeah. But to your point, he has developed in year 2. And I actually made this a point yesterday when I recorded Primetime Cowboys for Stadium Rant. And that, like, I have the belief that the Cowboys will keep 7 receivers because under Mike McCarthy, they really have. And if we assume that Jalen Brooks has secured that 6th receiver spot, then the 7th receiver spot comes down to him, Simi Fehoko, and potentially Jalen Moreno-Cropper. I don't think he's done enough to really fight for it. Yes, but it will come down to him and Simi to determine on whether or not they think Simi deserves another chance, even though right now Dennis Houston's looked like a better player.
Yeah, you want to go with the better player, and that's who we've seen. Is like we haven't seen enough from Simi where okay, he's doing better than a Dennis Houston. But who's your number 2 guy?
I look at the offensive line depth, and I want to kind of pair these 2 guys together. Okay. And that's just because I don't know how many offensive linemen they're going to keep. I think they kind of have to keep at least 9, potentially 10 or 11, just because I don't trust the health of the starters. If we go based on who the starters are projected to be from left to right tackle, Tyron Smith, Tyler Smith, Tyler Biadasz, Zach Martin, Terrence Steele, both our tackles are coming off injury seasons. Mm-hmm. So I'm almost positive we're going to see Tyler Smith play left tackle at some point down the line, which he should be anyway because I think he's their best left tackle now, but I think there's one of their best 5. Right now, in terms of their backup offensive lineman, you know who's been the best so far is Asim Richards, the 5th-round pick from North Carolina, a guy that you really liked out of the draft.
Yeah, that's one. Oh yeah, that's one guy that I was like, he's got potential. And
he was your pet cat. Yeah, I was higher on TJ Bass coming out of Oregon because I was looking at someone who could play left guard, and I think TJ Bass is actually one of those guys I want to bring up. Asim Richards, I think, has secured himself as the best backup offensive lineman, along with Matt Farniok, who's going to be more of an interior guy. Yeah. I do wonder like how they're gonna decide between players like Let's Go, who's really more of a swing tackle, Josh Ball, who last week against the Seahawks played his best game of any competition as a Cowboy at right guard, and then TJ Bass, who overall has had a better preseason and camp. TJ Bass has shown he can play left or right guard. And he'll play with that power that we saw at Oregon. Now, pass blocking is something he still needs to work on. But you see the power, the strength. He gets the grip inside of you from the running game. And that's what made it so enticing is that upside. Because you want to when you have these prospect offensive linemen, you more often than not, they're really good at either run or pass blocking, but they need to work on the other. You have to ask yourself, would you rather have a pass blocker you can teach the run block, or a run blocker you can teach the pass blocking? And it really is a pick your poison kind of thing. With TJ Bass, it's a guy who's a really good run blocker, teach how to pass. I think he's actually done a really good job this year at both. I think he might have pushed himself past Josh Ball as the preferred backup guard, even though I think Matt Farniok is going to be the overall top interior backup offensive lineman. I think you'd agree, depending on a center or guard. But I wonder between Josh Ball and TJ Bass if either one of them or both are going to make the roster, just because I can't tell beyond the starting 5, Asim Richards and Matt Farniok, who's going to fill up those last 2 to 3 spots.
Yeah, I think when it comes to Farniok, he brings that position flex, which is a big thing. That's why he's going to make the roster. He's shown solid. He had some good games and he had some bad games, but what the Cowboys like due to the injuries, you got to have that position flex. And guys like a Brock Hoffman, who's a peer center technician, how you brought up last week, that's one of the things why he's kind of in that fringe type of player. That's one of my guys that I got like on the bubble, like a Brock Hoffman, who's showing
he's good.
He's good.
He's good at center. He struggled at guard.
Yeah, like guard is not his thing. It's pure center. Oh, and shout out to Jordan in the comments. Yes, sir. Got to wear the brand.
What's up, Jordan?
Yes, sir. So. But yeah, that's my other bubble player is Brock Hoffman. I think he could be potentially on this team, but he only plays center.
It really sucks about John Stevens too, because I think he was pushing players like Sean McKeon and even Peyton Hendershot as that third or fourth tight end. Because when you have an athletic receiving threat at tight end,
Yeah.
you don't want to get rid of those guys because they're in such short supply, and they have run blockers at the tight end position. But right now, their most athletic tight end that they have on the roster, subjectively, might be Peyton Hendershot. I think their best one is Jake Ferguson. That's why I was fine with letting Dalton Schultz walk, because I thought Jake Ferguson has a higher ceiling than Dalton Schultz does. And so that really hurt that. If I was to point out another bubble guy, I'm looking, and it's another competition spot, actually. I'm looking at cornerback between Eric Scott and Kelvin Joseph, because I know right now the Cowboys are going to keep at least 6 corners. Just typically they do. And one of those guys is really CJ Goodwin, who's a special teams guy who just listed as a cornerback. He's a cornerback in name only. So they might keep 7 so they can have 6 pure cornerbacks. Eric Scott started off strong. He kind of struggled last week. Kelvin Joseph's made plays in the preseason. He's looked bad in camp, but he's made plays in the preseason. And coaches are going to care more about what you do against in-game competition than you will in practice. Because it's like Allen Iverson once said, we're talking about practice. And Tim Tebow was famously a terrible practice player, but for some reason in the games, things just seem to work out. That's subjective on how you felt about Tebow as a quarterback and as a pro. But we can't dispute the fact that when he played, good things happened.
Yeah. And
oh,
my bad.
I was gonna say, and Eric Scott was a low investment. He was a 5th round pick. Kelvin Joseph was a higher investment as a 2nd round pick 2 years ago, but he hadn't really done anything right now to where he secured himself as a spot. That's why him as a 2nd rounder has had to play in the preseason. Most of the time, your 2nd rounders, if they've lived up to the name, at this point in their career, they ain't playing in the preseason. He's like, no, he's a starter. He's a key contributor. We can't play him.
Yeah.
And I think if they don't keep both, you have to ask yourself, I think they're going to ask themselves, like, who do we think could clear waivers that we can bring back on the practice squad? But I almost feel like I trust the upside of what I've seen from Eric Scott more than what the athleticism of Kelvin Joseph could bring, just because I've seen enough of him to be ready to be done with him, but am open to giving him one more shot, because I will give Kelvin Joseph credit. He has looked much better in the nickel than he has on the outside.
Yeah, even when they drafted him, I thought he was going to be a nickel guy, and they were putting him at outside. I think that wasn't his forte. He should have been playing nickel a long time ago.
Well, there you go. I thought he could play safety. I thought he had the spatial awareness to play safety, but we're 3 years into that. Is there any more else on the list that we hadn't mentioned on your bubble players?
One last one, and that is Malik Davis. I think he's on the bubble. Because Rico Dowdle actually stepped up in this, and when it comes to preseason, like a guy that we were worrying, okay, can he make a comeback from that torn ACL? And then the year before that, he had the hip injury. So we're like, okay, he has promise, but he's always hurt type of guy.
Yep.
This year, he's shown he has that explosive. He can play return. He can be in the receiving game as well. And it's just Malik Davis hasn't looked like the Malik we've seen last year, who showed that he can play with power. He may not be the biggest guy, but he can get them short yardage, and he got a good footwork. But we didn't really see the Malik from last year until last game. We didn't see it in the other 2 games. So he's in that bubble for me. Like, is he going to make the roster? Or are we going to go 4 deep and running back? We're going to go 3. I think he honestly could be a practice squad player for us, just in case type of guy.
I think you're absolutely right about the fact that at this point he ain't competing with Rico Dowdle or Deuce Vaughn. He's competing with himself, because Ronald Jones has already hurt himself in terms of making the roster. 1, by underperforming at camp, and 2, by getting suspended. It's going to come down to, do the Cowboys want to keep 4 running backs? If he can play special teams, which we know he can. He made some special teams plays last year. But they also have areas of depth that they need to keep. They need to keep depth on the offensive line. I feel like they're going to keep depth at receiver and in defensive back. I think they're going to keep, in terms of combined safeties and corners, we're going to see at least 11 defensive backs, maybe 12 if they go 60 but safety. Because we talked about that with Wanya Thomas. They're going to ask themselves, is it necessary to keep 4 running backs? The new quarterback 3 rule, where you can have Will Grier as your 3rd quarterback and it won't count against your 53-man roster, definitely opens up some possibilities. So that's why he's not a bubble player for me for that matter. But also, Malik Davis, last year, you're right, in game time, he showed up as a good downhill runner, which I like. I love to come out of Florida as a downhill runner. In preseason, we saw a little bit of it better last week than we did in the first one. But Rico Dowdle has been a better pass protector. Not necessarily a good pump protector, but that was the one bad play. But he's been a better downhill runner. He's been a better overall player. So at this point, Malik Davis ain't competing with those other three running backs for a job. He's competing with himself. So I think you're right.
Like he just competing just to be on the team, or he's gonna make practice squad. But I think practice squad is where his destination is. I don't see them moving on from him for good. I don't think he's gonna be on that practice squad list unless somebody picks him up. But there's so many running backs out there, so he may not be on people's on watch or something. I think we're gonna have him. But the next one I wanted to go in is who is in and who's out, and then surprise cuts. So who do you got in that's going to be on this team?
Like, are we talking about a full 53 or like? Because I feel like with the bubble guys, we discussed the guys who could be in, could be out. But I'm gonna give you a surprise in. I'm gonna give you a surprise out and a surprise cut. I'm gonna give you one of each. Okay.
Okay.
A surprise in is the linebacker / edge Isaiah Lamb from FAMU, Florida A&M. He has played really well as a versatile inside linebacker and edge rusher. Coming out of Florida A&M, he was primarily an edge guy, but also played a little bit of outside linebacker, but covered mostly the flats. We saw a little bit of him inside, but not as much. But this time, under Dan Quinn's system, even though he's kind of undersized, he's listed at 6'2", 235. So the size is about average, maybe a little below average. But he has the skill set to be versatile on the inside and outside. He's played really well when asked to come in, especially as a run stopper. I think you also love the pass rush ability of him because that's what he was really, really well known for coming out of Florida A&M. It'll come down to if they think he can contribute on special teams because I think he could be the Azur Kamara of this team. Yeah, he could be that guy who kind of sneaks on as that last edge / linebacker guy who primarily is a special teams guy. But he's so talented. And even though he's a light player, he might be the right player, if you know what I'm saying. I think he might be the guy that actually pushes someone like a Jabril Cox for that final linebacker spot, just dependent on how many linebackers they decide to keep because they have a lot of edges and safeties who can play linebacker. That's going to be something to watch for as well. I think a player out. You know, I mentioned Jabril Cox as an out. I mentioned Kelvin Joseph. Both those guys potentially as outs. You know, a guy who I was actually pretty high on, but I think has really like kind of hurt himself. And I think like just he's gonna be out. I firmly believe he's gonna be out, and it's too bad because you really root for the guy. But Simi Fehoko is a guy that everyone put all their eggs in the basket with because they said he improved really well going into year 2. We didn't see really much of that. We didn't see him separate. And going into camp, people say he was having a really good camp. We saw his camp tape. He was okay. In the game, it hadn't shown up. He's made a few plays here or there, but the thing that I didn't like about Simi Fehoko coming out of the draft was that he was a 3-route kind of guy. He could run the post, he could run the go, and he could run the wheel route. Pretty much any route where he had to go in a straight line or go deep, he was good at it. He's 6'4", 225. I made this suggestion a few years ago that he should play tight end. I think he could easily be a John Stevens type player because he's not a guy who can separate. He's all of a sudden become a guy who's going to drop passes too, and that's something you can't be as a receiver if you're going to be running those deep routes. And so, plus I think that Jalen Brooks has outplayed him. I even think Dennis Houston's outplayed him, but I think it's going to come down to him and Dennis Houston for that final receiver spot. If they go 7, if it was up to me today, I would go Houston. I think he's played better. I think he's going to be the out guy. Now, in terms of a surprise cut, if they really care about money, wouldn't a surprise cut be Jordan Lewis? Because he's making about $5.5 million this year. His cap hit is around $6 million. And if they decide that their starting cornerbacks are going to be Trayvon Diggs, Stephon Gilmore, and Deron Bland on the inside, and Deron Bland played very well for you last year, and much more upside on the inside at nickel, then why is one of your most expensive cornerbacks going to be your 4th guy? It wouldn't make sense. I think if he ain't a trade option, he's a guy that you could cut to release some cap space for next offseason. I think he's still a very good, very viable starter, but you don't pay that kind of money to have someone be a rotational guy.
Yeah, because at the time when they signed that contract, he was that starter, but now you got to Blaine, you got to Gilmore, and you got to a dig. So you're looking at a guy that's like he's paying all this money, but he's playing that he's that fourth corner. But now you got potential with Eric Scott, and now Kelvin Joseph showing up. So you're like you can have these guys that are a lot cheaper on the cap, and you could see maybe Jordan Lewis maybe being in that trade block. There's one guy that I actually got as a surprise cut who's actually had a solid camp, but is a part of the numbers game when it comes to defensive tackle, and that's a Neville Gallimore type of player who's shown a good, had a good camp. So he is on and off a little bit, but but the thing is, you got to look. You have a Osa, you have a Mozzie Smith, you got a Hankins, you got a Chauncey Golston. And another thing is you're paying over $2 million for him, and he would be the fifth defensive tackle. Why don't you look into the trade block, looking for like in the potential offensive tackle or some offensive line depth when it comes to that? Just in case we have when it comes to depth on our offensive line, it's a little bit thin right now. You want to make sure that when it comes to like if a Tyron gets hurt or if Terrence still not there, it'd be good to have like a solid offensive tackle to back up. Because I do like a Sim Richards, but he's still a rookie. And Matt Walesko's been having shoulder problems, and you don't want that going into week one if you got to play against because you seen when he was playing against was it Boye and Mafe. He's gonna be playing against some edges in our division that are very fast, very quick off the ball type of guys. You want to make sure that you solidify that swing tackle just in case. That's one of my surprise cuts. But another one that could be potential because you brought up a guy like Isaiah Land, but you already you're five deep on edge rushers, and you're looking at you got a D-Law, you got a Parsons, you got a Armstrong, you got a Sam Williams, and now you're looking at a Dante Fowler. It was kind of that he still got potential, and you're not paying him that much. He may be a potential cut, and you can keep Isaiah Land, who a guy I don't think you can just let go because there's gonna be some team that's gonna grab a Isaiah Land because due to the type of player that he could potentially be.
I don't know if I agree about the edge rushers. You can never have too many good edge rushers. They don't want to get rid of those guys.
I get what you're saying. That's what I was thinking. Like he could be like a potential guy, but I'm not saying that I want to get rid of him. But I wouldn't be shocked that they would get rid of him.
Gotcha.
Because that's due to the fact they're not investing a lot of money into him.
Sure.
But I know Isaiah Land his first year in the league, he's gonna be on special teams, but you could have him at linebacker and edge. I think that versatility and Dan Quinn likes a guy like that. But he also likes Dante Fowler. So I'm kind of perplexed about Dante Fowler. I wouldn't want him to leave, but I wouldn't be shocked that he would get cut or traded for something.
It happens every year. But what doesn't happen every year?
What's that?
Our next segment.
Oh, yes, sir. And that is the D-Ware Ring of Honor.
First time since Gil Brandt in 2018 was inducted, the Cowboys inducted a member into the Ring of Honor. Not the member everybody has been clamoring for. Jimmy Johnson, once again, the topic of conversation for good reason.
Yeah.
DeMarcus Ware, though, I do wonder though if the timing was right, only because like the Cowboys typically they don't for some reason the Cowboys Ring of Honor always seems to come after the player's been inducted into the Hall of Fame, and I don't know why that is. Except Drew Pearson. Drew Pearson's time going into the Ring of Honor and the Hall of Fame was long overdue.
Oh, it was.
Emmitt Smith, Michael Irvin, and Troy Aikman all went into the Ring of Honor at the same time at 2005 during a halftime. I forgot which game that was, but they all retired at different years. But I think Jerry wanted there to be enough time to where they all could be Hall of Fame eligible, and then they wanted them all to go in together because the triplets, you could argue, are, if not the three greatest and most important players in Cowboys history, they're definitely three of those guys. The thing with Jimmy Johnson is that it seems to me the Cowboys, not the Cowboys, Jerry
I was about to say
won't put in Jimmy until he at least gets to a Super Bowl without Jimmy or without Jimmy's team, because everyone agrees that the Barry Switzer Super Bowl, that was still Jimmy's team, and Barry was just kind of along for the ride. Jerry even said publicly on TV that Jimmy would get in the Ring of Honor. When? It's been what, 2 or 3 years since he said that?
It was 2 years.
And also, I question the validity of it sometimes, just because you can't tell the story of the Cowboys' success. You can't tell the story of Jerry Jones as a Hall of Fame owner without those 5 seasons from Jimmy Johnson. I understand. I understand. Jerry wants credit. Jerry wants notoriety, and he could have so much more of it if he would let go of this and put in Jimmy Johnson into the Ring of Honor, because how much better that would make him look. I almost wonder, like, if he's afraid of just admitting that he's wrong. Sometimes the best mark of a man is admitting that you're wrong. I'm wrong every day. Matter of fact, for every 10 things that I say, I am right about 2 of them, and I'm okay with that. And this is one of those times I don't think Jerry realized like how many problems this would solve if he would just like give in this one time. I don't know how you feel.
It's been a long time coming, and Jimmy Johnson just needs to be into the Ring of Honor. There's no anybody left that you could say that needs to go before Jimmy Johnson. He was he was the reason why we got those Super Bowls in the '90s, and it's just Jerry Jones is just holding on to this old pettiness. You're in your 80s. You don't have that many years ahead of you.
I thought there was peace between them now.
Yeah, I thought so too. Especially that when he was saying you're gonna get in the Ring of Honor, and they just seem lighthearted, like they're like good old friends, good college friends. But it's just like he's still holding on. I'm not gonna put this man until I get there. And like all you got to do is just do a good old handshake. Welcome to the Ring of Honor, Jimmy. We're glad have you aboard, and that's all.
And you know what else is that like this really kind of diminishes another Cowboys legend getting into the Ring of Honor, because every time the Cowboys put somebody into the Ring of Honor, every offseason it comes around the same question: are you going to put Jimmy in? Are you going to put Jimmy in?
Yeah.
It diminishes DeMarcus Ware, because he talked about he wants the attention to put on DeMarcus Ware, but the fact that he won't put Jimmy in puts all the attention onto him for not putting in Jimmy, and takes away the attention supposed to be on DeMarcus Ware onto him for that reason. DeMarcus Ware is one of the greatest Cowboys in franchise history. Very easily one of the greatest defensive players. I mean, you could go down the list with like Randy White and guys like that, but Jerry keeps like making excuses like, "Oh, we have to make sure we have to evaluate all these coaches, all these players who've earned the right to do it." The problem is the longer he takes it, the more it takes away from their accomplishments from actually getting into the hall, whether or not it's valid or not. Because every player that's in the Ring of Honor, and every coach and every personnel that's in the Ring of Honor deserves to be there. No one's disputing that. Everyone's disputing the fact that ever since you had the opportunity to put him into the Ring of Honor, you put somebody else in there when you could just easily paired him with them, and you keep taking it away from the people you're putting it in, because all the focus goes on to the you and Jimmy feud, and that's what takes it away. But I don't want to dwell on that any longer. And since we're talking about defensive ends, let's shift the focus from one defensive end onto the other.
Sam Slam Williams. Did you mean to read the report or
Go for it, man? Go for it, man. You're the moderator.
All right, we're gonna. So this last Sunday, Sam Williams was speeding 71 miles per hour in a 45 zone.
Oof.
And just to add the cherry on top, he had a vape cartridge with THC, marijuana, rolling papers, and a Glock handgun with 14 9mm rounds. Just man.
Okay. So like right now, you know the thing that I concern the most about that honestly is the speeding, because if it's in a 45-mile-an-hour zone, it's probably close to residential.
Yeah.
I don't really care that much about the THC thing, because like regardless of how you feel about weed laws in this country, there are worse things you can be doing. Players have driven drunk and killed people. As like Dante Stallworth famously did that. Henry Ruggs did that.
Josh Brent too.
Josh Brent, that was a teammate. That's even worse. Or not even worse, but it's just as bad. But when it comes to Sam Williams, is that like the THC thing, and it isn't even like a hardcore drug. It's really just like a calming aid more than anything else. Yeah. And the Glock, we cannot diminish where players come from before they're famous. We also can't diminish the fact that as you become more famous, a bigger target comes on your back.
Absolutely.
Whether or not people love you or not, there's always someone who's going to hate you. And we don't know. Sam Williams might not be public with the fact that he might be getting death threats, whether it's like from someone who's a Cowboys fan or maybe someone from back home. We don't know the full extent of the environment in which he came from. Some players come from more dangerous and harsh environments than others. And I will never tell someone whose life has ever been in danger that they shouldn't have some sort of method to protect themselves if they're responsible with it.
Yeah.
And the fact that he had it in his car leads me to believe that this is something that he has probably had to the point where he never thought that he might have to use it, but that he might think that it's better to have it than to not have it at all. The speeding part is what really gets me, because that's been the issue of his, has been like the lack of maturity That's been his one thing. No one's questioned his talent or his ability. It was the fact that you were speeding in a residential, going highway speeds, 26 miles per hour over the speed limit with the banned substance and with I believe they said it was an illegally possessed firearm, right? They said it was legally possessed, which tells me that probably more than likely it tells me it wasn't registered because in the state of Texas, the gun laws are a little bit looser, and that just depends on like, your background as well as like the weapon itself. But to me, that's what stood out to me was that the speeding aspect that to me was the worst part of this. The other parts I can't judge that much, but the maturity has been an issue with Sam, and that's something that has to fix itself quickly because he's going to be a key contributor going into the season, which they're going to be a heavy Super Bowl contender.
Yeah, that's my biggest thing is like, okay, the THC and everything. You don't know what's going on in his life outside of the football realms, and when it comes to like all these athletes that are professional athletes, if you have a gun, make sure it's registered because that's the main thing they're gonna look at is like, okay, it's unregistered and everything. Just make sure that you do all the classes you can do. Just take time out of your day to make sure your guns are registered and make sure you got it on safety and all. That's the most important part when it comes to that. But when you're in like residential area and you're a Dallas Cowboy, you have the biggest target on your back. Just drive the speed limit. I know he probably got that need for speed. Go to go kart racing or something. Just if you had that urge to drive fast or something like that. Don't be speeding in like in areas and stuff. Just drive the safe limit. He has a family and everything. You got to think that way, and then you got a job. You're the guy on that team. You got to, and there's players that are going to be younger than you, and there's people that look up to you. Just be smart what you do. That's all I really got to say with Sam.
And you mentioned like people looking up to him. There's another optic in this that like people not really touching on, and like I might not be the right guy to bring this up, but I'm going to say it that he is a black man playing at the highest level on the highest sport of the biggest brand in America, and he is caught doing illegal stuff. He's doing illegal stuff, and that's going to hurt him. Okay, and like again, I recognize I am a white guy. I'm very much aware of what I look like, but the optics of it look even worse from the outside looking in, and that you have the chance to set you and your family up for life. He does, because defensive ends get paid, and defensive ends who can rush the passer get paid. Ask Micah Parsons, who next summer is probably going to have a bag so big he's going to need 3 Brinks trucks just to haul it.
Absolutely.
Sam Williams has that ability. He really does. And again, I don't want to speak too much on issues outside of people who look like me. I understand that's a very sensitive thing to do. I know you, Aaron, you probably could speak on it more than I could, but that is something that that the optics have to kick in. That when you're a Dallas Cowboy and you're a Dallas Cowboy of note, you're gonna be a role model whether you want to or not.
Yeah, and that race does come a part of it. You're gonna see in comments, here's another one blankety blank and all this stuff, and they're all.
Well, that's why I brought it up.
yeah. So absolutely. I think I hope this is like the thing where it's like, I'm going to change everything around. I'm going to make smarter decisions. Yeah, you're going to make mistakes because you're a human. He's 24 years old. I had to check how old he was. You're going to make a mistake, but the mistakes you already made twice. You already was speeding last year and you got into a car accident that could have happened, could have been worse than what it was last year. Like, you got to make that, you got your second chance. Don't do it again and everything. Just make the right decisions. That's all I got to say on Sam Williams. Hope the best for him. He's a great player. He seems like a great guy. He just made a couple of dumb decisions in his life, and I think hopefully this will be the thing where it's like, okay, it's time to straighten up when it comes to that. Mm-hmm. But we got our special guest in the building, Marcus Johnson. But I know you wanted to introduce him.
This man is one of the lead NFL writers for Silver and Black Pride, part of the SB Nation Network. He is also the host and creator of A Little Pocket Awareness, a quarterback podcast. You can catch him on all social media accounts at the Mark John NFL. It is Marcus Johnson. Marcus, how you doing?
Good. How you guys doing today?
Doing pretty good. How about yourself?
Happy to have you on, man. I've been trying to get you on the show anytime I play the Raiders for a long time. Finally get you on here. Anyway, before we get into the Raiders a Cowboys game, I want to touch on something because me and Aaron were talking about this. about, I'm sure you heard the news about Sam Williams. He was caught speeding 26 miles per hour over a residential, caught with an unregistered handgun and with THC. I made the argument that among those things, I feel like the speeding is the worst one because that actually put people at risk. The handgun, I said that I will not blame someone from based on their upbringing, like whether or not they think they need that. And honestly, don't really. And the THC laws are subjective to me. Me and Aaron also talked about the fact that him playing in the America's top league under their top brand as a black man, as a young black man with earning potential through the roof, how this looks at him from the optics. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think when you're in that type of situation, man, you always got to be kind of safe and figure out ways to kind of stay a pro. Because I mean, especially when you have that limelight on you and you have all those things going for you, if you get pulled over and you have those type of situations, I mean, everything could just be taken from you. Especially with somebody that's not like a for sure starter, right? Like he's not like a guy who's going to come in there and be like a starter and everybody knows he's going to start and everything's going to work out for him. If you're not one of those guys and you're messing around like that and you have those type of situations, and even with like the gun charge and the THC, I mean, you got to know where you're at. I mean, Texas, weed's not legal in Texas, so you got to know where you're at too with some of those things. And I think the gun charge is a little weird, but speeding is never something that works out. I mean, you can talk about Henry Ruggs with the Raiders, so you can kind of see how that works out with that, but. Yeah, when you're that type of player and you mess up like that, it's not going to work out for you because one, you have to make sure that if you're not a superstar, I mean, they're just going to cut you like it's easy. It's not they're going to be able to get rid of you, trade you, whatever they want to do. It's not something they're going to think twice about if you're making mistakes like that.
It's kind of things it's a cutthroat type of business. Like when you make too many mistakes, they're going to go and find the next player. That's kind of the sad part about it. Mm-hmm. But you just got to make those. You got to learn from those mistakes and do better when it comes to the future because some people wish they were in the same opportunity as you.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly. I agree with that 100%. All
right, let's get on a lot lighter stuff. Let's talk about the game. Let's talk about some players to watch. So Marcus, I was actually looking at the Raiders' offseason acquisitions, and y'all made some pretty solid ones. I made the argument that while Jimmy Garoppolo, in terms of the quarterback position, I don't think he's as good or as talented as Derek Carr, but for the system he's going into, it might be a better fit.
Yeah, it's kind of up and down with me on that. I kind of want to see it play out because Jimmy Garoppolo back in 2016, he's a totally different quarterback than he is now. There's been a lot of injuries. Fair. A lot of things that happened to him. A lot of things happened to his leg. He doesn't play the same as he did. If you go back and watch some of the games he did with the Patriots back in 2016, it's not the same guy, right? And he doesn't step into his throws as much, and a lot of things that the injuries have just taken a toll on him. And he's a lot older, so and this offense is not for the weak. I mean, this is not a offense to where you could just kind of be like Jared Goff and do play action and hit guys over the middle and West Coast offense type of thing. You got to anticipate windows and be a really high level quarterback play, and it asks a lot of you. So it's gonna be interesting to see how Jimmy handles it. I know a lot of people assume he's gonna be a better fit, but man, this is a tough system. And Tom Brady used to run it to perfection. Josh Allen, who's also another high level quarterback, he runs a kind of similar system and he runs it really high level. But then you have like guys like Mac Jones and those type of guys that don't do it as well. And you don't know where Jimmy's gonna fall in there. So it's gonna be interesting to see where he goes this season.
Speaking of quarterbacks, I've watched both of y'all's preseason games, and a guy that I was really high on the draft, Purdue quarterback Aiden O'Connell, he's looked pretty good. I mean, Aaron, I don't know if you've seen Aiden O'Connell play at Purdue or play with the Raiders. He's looked almost Brock Purdy-ish.
I've seen a couple of clips. He definitely got the potential.
He's been throwing darts. That's his thing. He coming out of college, he was a very accurate quarterback in the pocket. Is when you pressure him and try and force him outside the pocket, he's not very good on the run. He's not that kind of quarterback. But if he has a clean pocket, he can throw it. He can get the receiver into a tight window.
Yeah, he's shown a lot. He's shown a lot more than he showed in college a little bit to me. Sometimes in college, I felt like he was like a one-read guy, and he would just kind of stare things down. And I think this last game against the Rams, you saw him go through some reads and stuff and make some things happen and anticipate, which is something he did in college, which is something you, as an NFL quarterback, you want to be able to anticipate windows and do things like that. Because, I mean, you can't be late in the NFL. These guys are super quick. They move fast. Those windows close super fast. So if you are late, it's going to be an interception or it's going to be knocked down. So to see him be early and anticipate things is really showing us a little bit of high level quarterback play. So see how he grows. Like I said, they want Jimmy to play, and we'll see how Aiden Connell goes throughout the season. But I think there's a chance he can grow and become a starter. It's just is it going to be with the Raiders? I don't know, but I think he's going to get a chance at some point in the
NFL. Sticking on offense, we Josh Jacobs. He wasn't in the offseason, but a guy named Zamir White. Do you think he could be a potential RB1 or RB2 when it comes to the Raiders?
Yeah, I think he could be an RB2. I think you just have to find a system that works for him. You can't do like an outside zone, inside zone type of stuff with him. He's not really a zone back. He doesn't really read things really well. He doesn't have a lot of great vision. But if you could put him in some pure power and he's following a fullback, the Raiders like to do a lot of I forms. So you guys are going to see that this weekend. A lot of I formations, a lot of those old school strong eye, weak eye formations that you're going to see that you saw in the 90s and in the late 2000s or even early 2010 that you saw from a little bit from the 49ers. You're going to see that from the Raiders. You're going to see those old school formations. And I think when you do those power runs, you can see a lot from Zamir White. But other than that, I mean, he's a little up and down. It's not really that exciting if you're a Raiders fan, if Josh Jacobs doesn't play. It's not a lot to look forward to, in my opinion, because we don't know if they try to mix it up, if he's going to get pushed back there, if the offensive line doesn't play as well as they've been playing in the preseason. Is he going to be able to get any yards because he can't create by himself? So it's be interesting to see what Zamir White does in the season. But as Josh Jacobs is definitely the better running back for sure.
Since you mentioned offensive line, one, I don't know who y'all's projected offensive line is. I think right now, if I had to guess, Colton Miller and Dylan Parham are the only guys that, based on y'all's personnel, that I could pinpoint, just that I know would be starters. Again, I don't. You cover the team in depth.
Mm-hmm.
But everyone's talked about that the Cowboys' best strength in terms of starters and depth has been their pass rush. Are we going to see any of the starting offensive linemen out there? And if so, what's the matchup versus our defensive ends that you think is the one we need to keep an eye on?
So it's gonna be interesting to see who they put out there game 3. I don't think you're gonna see Colton Miller. Colton Miller hasn't played all preseason. You're not gonna see him. Dylan Parham, he had a concussion week 1. I think he played too deep into the game, in my opinion, and then he ended up getting hurt. I was a little upset about that. But I think you're gonna see some Thayer Mumford and you're gonna see some Jermaine Illuminor, who are the tackles and who are battling for the right tackle spot. I think they're gonna play. I think Mumford's gonna play a lot, so you're gonna see a little bit of a chance to see what the Cowboys pass rush has against those guys. I think Thayer Mumford is taking a big step. I mean, he moved to guard as a senior at Ohio State, and he was projected to be like a 3rd round tackle as a junior, and he moved to guard and ended up being the 7th round draft pick, and he's actually looking like a 3rd round draft pick as a player. So I think he has a chance to become a starter there. Jermaine Illuminor is going to be out there. And then guard's going to be mixed it up. I probably expect to see Greg Van Roten out there. He's the right guard. Andre James, I don't expect him to play center, but I expect like Alex Bars and Tam Moody to kind of battle it out. So, but they've been playing lights out in the preseason. I mean, Aiden O'Connell's only been under pressure 5 times, and he's thrown the ball 36 times. So
good.
Yeah, so if the offensive line is keeping him upright, I mean, he's looked really good, but it's gonna be interesting to see how they work it out in the season. But they look really good right now.
One guy I want to talk to this. I know we're still on the offense a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Trey Tucker. What is your thoughts on Trey Tucker playing? He showed he can do some things when he was at Cincy. How do you feel about him on the Raiders offense?
One thing I really like is that he's showing that he could play outside, which he didn't do it since he played primarily in the slot. And, he's showing he could work outside a little bit, a little bit condensed formations or whatever, but he's still playing outside and showing he could beat releases. And he has a great release and he's getting deep. He's killing guys off the ball. Guys try to come and press to him. He's murdering them, and he's about 10 yards separation on some of these guys. So he is out there just showing his speed. His acceleration is crazy. He's showing a lot more as a route runner. I still think he has a little bit of stiff hips. So sometimes when you can see him try to get out of breaks or some comebacks and stuff like that, you're a little bit worried about what he can really do outside because it's just a little stiff there. And then, sometimes when he has the ball in his hands and he really can't make guys miss that you would like for somebody that size and that speed. But he has a lot of upside as a deep threat. I mean, you could run those post routes, can run seam routes, can run go routes. You can do a lot. And I think Trey Tucker, he has a lot of upside and potential that the Raiders can tap into.
I remember 2 years ago, the Raiders were considered one of the worst pass rushing teams in the NFL, and here y'all are with Max Crosby, who I actually really loved at Eastern Michigan. Chandler Jones, who even into his 30s, is still playing at a high level. Jordan Willis, who's been a really nice rotational player for his career, and then y'all got my guy from my school, Tyree Wilson, who some people thought was going to be for the first edge rusher taken. Two questions. One, what have you seen from Tyree Wilson at a camp that gives you confidence for this season? And two, am I going to be able to see my guy on Saturday?
So I think he'll play Saturday. He's been coming around. He's had the Liz Frank injury that he was dealing with, and he just started practicing like a couple weeks ago. So I think he's going to get a chance to play this week. Hopefully, maybe not. The first time you might see him is week 1 because they're trying to rest him and make sure that they have that pass rush rotation. Max Crosby, he's a dog. I mean, you don't have to worry about Max. He's good. He's probably the best run defender in football too. That's something that he's really underrated at. Yeah. I mean, it goes both ways. He has a great pass rush. He's one of the best run defenders in football, and he's just relentless. That's a relentless motor. That dude is always coming, goes 100% all the time. And then Chandler Jones, I really expect Chandler Jones to kind of have a little bit of a bounce back year just because Tyree Wilson is there. Because if he starts falling off, Tyree Wilson is going to get more snaps and eat into his snaps more and more if Chandler Jones doesn't perform. So I expect Chandler Jones to have a little bit of a bounce back. And, Malcolm Kuntz is somebody that, I want to shout out. Malcolm Kuntz is having a great preseason. That's somebody you guys will see on Saturday that he's really showing off his bend that he showed in college. And I think that's, he's making his way into that pass rush rotation. So interior wise, though, I still think they're a little weak there. They're going to need a lot of work to get some pressure inside, and if that's not going to happen, they're not going to be a great defensive line. So they got a lot of work inside. They're pretty good at the edges. Inside is still a little iffy, but we expect to see some growth there.
And sticking on defense, going to player acquisition, y'all added a Marcus Peters and a Marcus Ebb to a young secondary because you have Nate Hobbs and you got
here's Marcus Johnson.
Johnson, and you got Trayvon Moehrig. So what is your thoughts on those two vets on your secondary?
Marcus Peters is going to help a lot. I think he's helped these guys grow and figure out what to do in zone coverage. I mean, the Raiders are going to play a lot of cover 2. They're going to play a lot of cover 4, I believe. Not as much man. You might see some man. They played a lot last year at the end of the season, but that was more to kind of simplify it. They weren't playing the zones really well, and I think they have some players that they feel like are more comfortable in those schemes. Like Marcus Epps comes from a primarily quarters zone scheme in the Eagles, and Trayvon Moehrig, that's where he came from at TCU, is quarters zone scheme at TCU. So I think he's gonna be more comfortable there, and I think they're gonna be able to mix it up. The secondary is still a little iffy. I think that they're gonna be really young there, so there's gonna be some chances where they're still giving up big plays and things like that just because they're young at that position. And the pass rush is gonna have a big deal to deal with, to kind of mix it up and make sure that the cornerbacks are not having to cover too long, because I don't think they're going to be able to do that. I think it's going to be a little bit of trouble back there if they you don't get any pass rush at all. So the pass rush is going to be very key for the secondary this year, but they're going to be young, and I expect them to see them take a next step probably in 2024.
So two offensive acquisitions that y'all had that I think went under the radar but were still very beneficial. Austin Hooper, the tight end. And Jacoby Myers, who I think was like, if he's not the most underrated receiver in the NFL, he's definitely the most underappreciated receiver in the NFL.
Yeah.
Which one of those guys do you think is going to benefit the most in this new system?
I think it's Jacoby Myers. I think Jacoby Myers is going to be somebody that's going to have a pretty big year. I think Jimmy Garoppolo is not known to throw deep, and Jacoby Myers is not known to get deep. So I think he's going to be able to hit those crossers, a lot of those short routes, and I think Myers is somebody that's going to have a pretty big season. Not maybe like a 1,200 yard season or anything like that. I mean, but like 800 yards, kind of the same thing he usually was doing over there in New England, where he's just kind of an effective number 2 wide receiver. Because he's replacing Matt Collins. He's going to be playing a little bit more outside, I believe, this year, which is going to be interesting to see how that goes. Because he's been primarily in the slot while he was at New England, so I think there's going to be a chance for him to kind of move outside a little bit. They're going to do probably some more condensed formations to kind of keep him in the slot, but have him be outside. But I still think they're going to be able to mix it up, especially with him and Ronald Renfro. They're going to have like 3-by-1s where they're going to have Renfro as the outside slot and then Myers as the inside slot, and they can mix it up and have them do crossers or whatever they want to do. So I think he's going to have a big season, and somebody's going to, if you're in fantasy, I think that's somebody that you should get later on.
Yeah, the thing about having guys who can separate in the NFL is those guys will always have a job, especially in this new era of passing. Separation is one of the biggest things you can do as a receiver coming in. So me and Aaron were talking earlier in the show about how right now it seems to for the Cowboys, their biggest, most glaring weakness is depth behind the starters on the offensive line. I don't know how many of your key players on the defensive line are going to be playing, but who are some guys that you've seen so far through camp and through preseason who you think will play on Saturday that could give the offensive line back up some problems?
Main guy, like I was talking about, Malcolm Kuntz. I think Malcolm Kuntz is having a great preseason. He is winning as a pass rusher. He's winning consistently, and he's definitely going to get somebody trouble on Saturday. I think that he's just trying to make this team. I think Tyree Wilson getting drafted kind of has put a little fire under him too, because he put him on the verge of maybe getting cut, especially with them bringing in Jordan Willis, who plays a run better than he does. So I think Malcolm Kuntz is going to be a guy that's going to give a lot of trouble. From the inside, I think No Farrell Jr. is going to be getting better. If your guard's not ready, he's a very strong guy, and he'll get inside you and kind of just run you over. So I think Neil Farrell is a pretty good player that's kind of growing there. But I would say Malcolm Kuntz is probably the biggest guy that's going to play. That's going to be the most dangerous player out there on Saturday. Making tackles. Kind of have nightmares a little bit with his bend, because his bend is pretty special, and he's going to bend around that quarter and get to the quarterback.
Who are some guys that you think that would be like on the bubble to make the team, or could possibly get cut?
A couple guys, I'm not a big Jerry Tillery guy, so he played a lot into the second quarter, and he was supposed to be the starter. So that's somebody that I could see them maybe getting traded. See a lot of trades at this point in time too, besides cuts. And I think that he's a trade candidate, somebody that maybe they could end up cutting because they're not paying him that much money either. So I think he might be a little bit on the roster bubble. Linebacker positions can be really tough. Amari Burney, who they drafted in the 6th round, he's battling it out with, I think, somebody named Drake Thomas, who's undrafted, who I think Drake Thomas is playing better than he is and showing that he could play the run. And Amari Burney is really struggling there, even though he's a good coverage linebacker. So it's going to be interesting to see how they do that. They might end up trying to put him in the practice squad and trying to keep him around. And, of course, at tackle, too, I think tackle is the big one when it comes to kind of the bubble, because, you have Justin Herron, who's a tackle, who might end up getting cut there, and then Dalton Wagner, who out from Arkansas, who it was a high price undrafted free agent. He has played pretty well at right tackle, and he's kind of giving that 4th tackle position a run for its money. So we'll see how that goes with them too, and see if he can take a next step in this next game and maybe solidify that position over Herron.
Last question for me before Aaron can ask any more heat questions he has. And that's and he and I talked about guys who were on the bubble, guys who were like either playing their way in or playing their way out, right? And everyone knows that's what's so key about this last preseason game is like we don't expect to see any of the Cowboys starters, at least not the main ones. I don't expect to see Dak Prescott or Zach Martin or Micah Parsons. Sorry, anyway, any Raiders fan that's watching this, like they want to see those guys. Wait till week 1.
Yeah,
but we also made the argument that sometimes this is where a lot of these guys' legacies get started. So other than the guys you've mentioned, is there another bubble player for the Raiders that's played their way into potentially earning a spot on this roster, again, that you haven't already mentioned so far? That we should watch.
Philip Dorsett. I think the wide receiver Philip Dorsett, he's going to get a lot of run on Saturday. I think he's been playing pretty well. He's been showing a lot of the ability to get open, and he can get open deep. I think he's showing both of those abilities, and I think that's somebody that is on the bubble, especially for a wide receiver. It's so tough. I think they're going to keep probably 5, but DeAndre Carter is getting a lot of run, and he didn't play the first preseason game, and Trey Tucker is going to make the team. So if they keep 6, I think Philip Dorsett has a chance to get there and be that guy. He had a really good game last week against the Rams, and him and Brian Hoyer were hooking up on some big plays. So I think Philip Dorsett is a guy that has a chance to be on that bubble that can end up kind of sneaking on this football team.
I like that.
I just honestly, I got one more question. I've been a fan of this guy. He came out of the draft, Devon Diablo.
Yes.
What do you think about Devon Diablo?
He should have been on Dan Quinn's team.
I know. That's probably
well, it's funny. You're right. Because Dan Quinn comes under Gus Bradley, and that's who Gus Bradley drafted to play linebacker was Devon Diablo. And I think Devon Diablo was a little bit of better fit for that system, but I think he's getting better. One thing he still does is he plays the run really well. coming out, it was interesting. You expected him to probably play pass coverage better than play the run, but it's been a little bit the opposite in the NFL. I think in zone coverage, he's been a little lost. I think he's had a little trouble back there with zone coverage. Man coverage is actually still pretty damn good. I think that's something that the Raiders should use a little bit more is him in man coverage because I think he can guard tight ends and he has that speed and that
he's just Jaron Curse, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. That long ability, but he also can play linebacker a little bit. But zone coverage is what he's got to get better at. He was really lost last year. It was, he was pretty bad in zone coverage. It was guys running behind him that he's supposed to guard and him not squeezing things he was supposed to squeeze on in the zone coverage as a linebacker. So that's what he had to work on. He has to get better there and that feel as a linebacker. But I think he still plays the run really well. He plays man coverage, and hopefully we'll get a big year out of him.
Yeah, I wanted Divine Diablo, but I settled for Marquise Bell, and I'm happy with Marquise Bell. Marquise Bell's been a beast, also. Yeah. Marcus, I really appreciate having you on. I've been trying to have you on in some kind of capacity for a while. I'm glad we get you on to talk Cowboys Raiders. Why don't you go and plug everything you got? Let our listeners and viewers know where they can find you and all your content.
Yeah, so you can find me on YouTube too. Check out my show, Tape Don't Lie. It's a Raiders show. But if you're into the draft and it's February, we do a whole bunch of draft stuff. So make sure you go to subscribe there because you can catch everything draft. I go over like a whole bunch of players. So it could be for Cowboys, doesn't matter. Your player might end up getting drafted, and I might have covered him. So make sure you go to Tape Don't Lie. It is a Raiders channel for sure, but during this off season to do a lot of draft stuff. Then a little pocket awareness, check that out. We just did our quarterback list. We did 20 through 11. So go ahead, check that out as well. And then follow me on Twitter, of course, at the Mark John NFL for all your NFL stuff.
Yeah, appreciate you, Marcus, for being on the show. You definitely know your stuff. I actually got to watch your Tape Don't Lie podcast a little bit yesterday, so you definitely got some great stuff on there.
All right, thanks, man. I appreciate you guys.
Yes, sir.
See you later, bro.
See ya.
I love having guests on, don't you?
Yeah, absolutely. It's good to have another perspective, even if from a different team, because at the end of the day, we're all fans of the game of football, and it's just like getting to know. Okay, there's a different perspective than what I had in my own mind, because sometimes when you just hear what you're thinking, like okay, you think you're all everything, but when somebody like that has a different mindset, it's like I learned something today.
And it's great when they're intelligent and know what they're talking about, too, because then you can learn something along the way. Because you can hear Marcus talk. He knew what he was talking about.
Yeah, that's one thing. That's what I was noticing when I watched the show yesterday. Like, he was like giving like a complete breakdown. It's kind of reminded me of you watching Baldinger and a lot of other guys.
It's very detailed.
Yeah, just down to the nitty gritty, like the little parts you don't even think about until somebody breaks it down like he did.
Mm-hmm.
But it's definitely been a great show. Definitely can't wait to have some more guests on. I know we're gonna have some season not even started, but it's gonna be a great year for podcasting, and it's great for football. Was there anything that you wanted to plug anything, bro?
We will be setting up a surprise show for next week that'll lead us off into the season. I don't want to give anything away just yet, but be on the lookout for our next show. Aaron knows what it is I'm trying to build up into for week one.
All right.
But for now, just be on the lookout for it.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you missed this show, we're gonna have it on the replay tomorrow at lunchtime. Like if you're like on your lunch break and head into the food truck, put your headphones on, listen to Tacos Touchdown replay.
Food truck.
Yeah. Hey, I got to put tacos in there. Some people go to this.
I know what you're getting at.
Yeah, absolutely. But hey, y'all have a good one. Peace.
Peace.